Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, I am really delighted to introduce my guest today, Susanna Harkonen, not the Harkonnens of the science fiction, The Dune. Want to make that clear. Susanna is a registered counselor and a former business executive who specializes in mental health and wellness at work. Her inner work training programs help organizations improve mental wellness, management, and care. Susanna has distilled decades of learning and personal trials and errors into her programs. Her deepest desire is to see mental wellness become the new normal at work and witness employees thrive professionally and personally. Well, who doesn't want that? Thank you for being here, Susanna. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Tammy.
At Work from the Inside Out, we always like to talk about, some of those earlier years, some of the things that might have informed or otherwise where you are today. So take us back to younger Susanna and what she was up to and how she landed where she is today.
To go back to my childhood, I grew up in Finland and close to the Russian border. So the Soviet border, actually, in those days, which was
right.
It was a very different era.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
And we lived, under the shadow of the big brother watching you.
Yeah.
I think it was a very different time for all of us, in the US, everywhere. It was just a very divided world in those days. In those days, my dad had a job which made him travel a lot.
Oh.
Which was quite exceptional in those days. People didn't take the plane as they take a bus.
Ah, okay.
So it was, he would travel the whole world. I think he's been to 140 some countries in his lifetime. And that, to me, was an eye-opener. Because Dad would go and come back with, for example, dolls like with traditional dresses. And then I had a huge collection from all over the world, which somehow connected me to those countries. And then he would have crazy stories to tell. He would bring food that we had never tasted.
Oh, wow.
We had a fair amount of international guests as well. So from early on, I had contacts with the outside world that I don't think that people in my peer group necessarily did.
Yeah. Wow. That's a big difference.
It was a huge difference. It made a huge difference. And my dad really was, in a way, my hero. Not in a way, he was my hero. And his job sounded so incredibly glamorous.
What it now, because of the travel or because of the kinds of interactions he was having with people, or did you think like, oh, this is what work is? Did your mom work outside the house or? Yeah,
my mom is a teacher.
Okay.
So it was a very different world.
Yeah.
And she was there all the time and she didn't. So my dad was the exotic person who would come back and have all these stories and wonderful gifts and amazing, just an openness to the world.
Yeah.
I grew up at an era where we had 2 TV channels.
Yes. Well,
So I don't want to sound like Finland was in those days was a horrible place. It was not at all.
No,
but it was just a very different time. So you didn't have that exposure to the outside world unless you knew somebody who was traveling, unless you knew somebody who was, unless you met people, unless you physically saw those things. And so, for example, exotic food or anything exotic, even if hearing foreign languages was not as common as it is today.
So is that because of the way that Finland in general was involved in trade and international commerce and things like that?
It wasn't any united Europe. You didn't just travel freely.
Right.
You had different money, you had different language, you had all those things that separate countries, and very clear identity, I would say. And then Finland is also, because by its nature, it's at the very edge of Europe, next to the Soviet Union.
Right.
In those days. It has a language which is very different from the rest of the languages in Europe.
Yeah.
Separates it. It's a very hard language to learn. That separated us, and then it has a horrible climate. I mean, well, you're in Massachusetts. It's not. It's quite similar, actually, to Massachusetts.
Well, I spent one day in Finland, and it was lovely. The one day I was there.
Yes, I'm sure. Especially if you were there in summertime. The white nights are gorgeous.
I'm curious. So as a child, you had this window into the rest of the world through your dad came swooping in from all these trips and had all these wonderful things to share. Did you imagine yourself getting older and growing up and traveling yourself, or him taking you on trips, or could you ever at that age imagine yourself living somewhere else, or did you think you would live in Finland for the rest of your life? Did you have like a vision from a young age onward or anything like that?
I did. I remember distinctly being 6 years old, and we would travel every summer.
Oh, okay.
My mom had long holidays, and we would go abroad every summer. And every time we came back, I would feel this sinking feeling. And I remember distinctly, I was 6 years old, and I was on a big boat. We'd travel with the cargo boats, huge cargo boats. And we were approaching the shore, and I remember standing there. I remember the wind in my face. I remember the scenery, and saying like, no, I mean, I have to go away.
Wow. Even at 6.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
None of my family understood it. None of my family has that urge or has ever had that urge. I had no particular reason to leave. Mm-hmm. But I think it has always been in me. It's almost like destiny. What my father instilled in me, that desire to travel, to open myself to the world, showed all the possibilities. And he has also been instrumental in giving me opportunities, encouraging me to go when I was older. I traveled abroad by myself for the first time when I was 13.
Wow.
My parents sent me to Sweden, to a family that they knew. And since then, they would send me to Southeast Asia. My dad sponsored me to India. There were, in those days, I mean, these days, it's such a commonplace thing. Yeah. Nobody thinks anything of jumping into a plane and going to Indonesia, India. Yeah. In those days, it was a big deal. And I am really grateful for my father that I've been able to travel, because he really understood that desire. I think we shared that in common.
Did any of that translate into a vision or a curiosity about what you might do as an adult, what you might do for work, or how you might spend your life going forward?
All I knew was that I wanted a job that would enable me to travel.
Okay.
So basically, in choosing my studies, I followed my dad's footsteps.
Oh.
It was in supply chain management. And I ended up studying the same thing as he did. And
okay. So that's what he did work-wise.
Yeah, that was what he did work-wise. Worked for a big company. And I think that was not a conscious choice. I wouldn't say that was the only only reason why I chose my career. There were several other reasons, but travels and international side were definitely some of them. And I remember distinctly when I was 9 years old and we were in the UK, and I wanted to have an ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents were a little bit tired or lazy. I don't know what happened, but they just didn't want to go to the place where you could buy ice cream. So they gave me money and they told me what to say. And I had no idea what the words meant because I had not started studying English at school yet. So this was a completely foreign language to me.
Uh-huh.
But I learned them by heart, and I went there with this strange looking money and said these magical words, and I got my ice cream. And I still get chills, that thrill of understanding how important it is to learn other languages and how that opens a door. It was an amazing experience, truly.
And so you said a moment ago that you kind of followed in your dad's footsteps, the profession of supply chain management and seeing that, as a good way to, open up the world to you or continue to open up the world to you. But you said that wasn't the only reason why you went in that direction. What were other reasons why you went in that direction?
Well, I have been my other interest. It's like this. I have always had this more sensitive side, and I really loved poetry, and I loved history, and I loved all sorts of cultural things. But then I grew up in an environment which was very pragmatic.
Yes.
So there was a point in time when I absolutely wanted to study Egyptology.
Ah.
And I called the professor, because I was really keen on studying Egyptology. And he told me he didn't say get real, but that was more or less the message.
So this was when you were already at university, you were thinking.
Yeah, I was contemplating on where to go. What to study. And I had a few options, and business school was one of them, and then Egyptology was another, and then there was history was the third one. History major, and the professor told me to get real and get a real profession, become an engineer, or go into supply chain management or something reasonable. And that crushed my dream of Egyptology forever, and I'm kind of grateful to him in the hindsight. But yeah, that was how I ended up in the business school.
So that was undergrad or grad school? I'm just curious.
In those days, we had both combined. So we didn't have an undergrad. You went, you got your master's automatically.
I get the feeling that a lot of these choices you made were not just, I'll do what dad did. It was genuinely of your own volition too.
I'm a great believer in destiny.
Yeah.
Our life having a red thread that goes through our lives, and if you look back in the hindsight, you often see how that path has been taking you to where you need to be.
Yeah.
Today, and this today is going to take you where you need to be in 10 years.
Yeah.
So every single choice that I've made, I have made some bad choices, I have made some good choices, but I've learned something.
Sure.
It all serves me. Even it may seem funny that I'm a counselor these days and I work with mental health.
Yeah.
But there's a real connection with supply chain management.
Well, do tell. Now you got me curious. Not that you didn't before, but let's see, supply chain, mental health. Okay. Supply chain counseling. Tell us, what's the connection for you?
For me, the connection is the supply chain management is something that's concrete and relatively tangible, and there are objectives.
Mm-hmm.
And mental health is often a little bit elusive.
Mm-hmm. A little.
A little.
Just a little.
But if you take those principles that you have in quality management, or you take those goals that you have, certain objectives, and you work, for example, with numbers or clear, tangible goals, those can be applied to mental health too. And I think that mental health, the feel-good sides could sometimes benefit a little bit more of an objective, pretty down-to-earth, structured approach. My experience of counseling and therapy is that it can be elusive, and it can be sort of like an amoeba-like thing that you don't know what the objectives are and how you're going to get there.
Right.
Whereas having that background in supply chain management is very helpful in planning those things, and certainly in quality assurance and structures, building structures around the concepts that I'm sharing with my clients.
Right. That makes actually having a mental health background myself, I think that makes a lot of sense. If you're working with somebody who's feeling, feeling messy, feeling lost, feeling, just really out of control in some way within themselves, if they have some structures or an objective or some goals to work on, that starts to bring them to a more grounded place. It gives them a sense of direction and can actually help them to start to move forward rather than just continuing to just sort of spin out.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. And the other thing where I find it really helpful is that I have been there. I can relate to people who are working in organizations. I can relate to their certain situations, certain really unpleasant, toxic situations.
Yeah.
I've been there. I've seen them.
Yeah.
So it's not some theory that I have read in books. It's actually really lived experience.
Right. So you're connecting the dots for people out of your own experience, but also out of your training.
Yeah.
So you spent many, many years though traveling and working in supply chain. I know you lived and worked in China for many years.
Yep.
And then what was there was a transition point or a point where you decided you wanted to move in another direction, or how did that occur?
So I think that change really started quite early. And I was never really, apart from my thesis, and I had a wonderful supervisor for my thesis. We really worked very well together. He really inspired me, and he instilled this love of knowledge. He had studied at MIT, and he was really had this American approach where he would share information, and he had open door policy, and it was wonderful to work with him. And that maybe shifted things a little bit for me. But when I went to the, when I started my career, I left Finland immediately after, actually before my graduation. And I started working abroad. The discrepancy between what I had learned in the business school and how real world worked was quite shocking.
Really?
I had studied management, logistics, of course, supply chain management, but then also, some administration, more like international business, how to manage people. I had always been interested in people and people management.
Right.
And then I saw none of that in the actual real world.
Now, do you think that was somewhat tied to the particular industry you were in, or the culture? Did you go right to China from Finland?
No. I worked in Switzerland. So.
Oh, in Switzerland. Yeah. Okay. So, so that probably was a culture that was more familiar than working in a place like China, I would imagine.
Culturally it was, but it was a large American corporation.
I'm curious where the disconnect or where the discrepancies were for you. in that. And again, I'm wondering, you went to school and you had certain expectations. Those expectations weren't met. You graduated, you went into a job, you had certain expectations. Those expectations weren't met. What kept you going?
Some inborn resilience, I guess. Yeah. But I did have a mini burnout when I was 27. So I realized that was a turning point in my life. There've been two big turning points in my life, and one of them was this burnout or mini burnout that I had. I collapsed doing a presentation. I had a job which made me travel a lot, and I was under a lot of pressure, both personally and professionally. And there were things happening in my life that didn't make it really easy. Oh. So this is normal, but it made me realize that I need to take better care of myself. That's some sort of where my self-care counseling part with myself really began. Mm-hmm. And then in my early 20s, I had a near-death experience.
Oh, early 20s. So was
early 20s, yeah. That was before. So
were you still in school at that point, or were you already?
I was. Oh. I was still at school, yeah. And that experience, I had an accident during my summer holidays, and a big accident, and I ended up in hospital. And earlier I said to you that I do believe that everything happens for a reason. Mm-hmm. What I find really fascinating about that experience is that it's very vivid in my mind. It's one of those experiences that you will never forget.
Right.
People say, "Oh, did it really happen? Do you really remember those things?"
Yeah.
It's something that's so extraordinary and out of this world that you have a cellular memory of it.
Yes. Yes.
As I was leaving my body, I saw my entire life as a fast forward film. And the fascinating part was that I was able to see every single detail and the whole bigger picture at the same time. And there were all these things when I would say, "Oh, that's why I met that person. Oh, that's why that thing happened. Oh, how interesting. Oh, that's a choice I could have made differently."
Oh, really? So there was not just a rewind, but an evaluation or an assessment.
An assessment of my entire life until up to that point. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And that left a really strong impression on me, because when I came back, I realized that nothing happens without a reason. Mm-hmm. And I always try to remember that, even these days when something not so nice happens, because life isn't always perfect.
Right.
Right. But I do believe in destiny in that sense, and there's a reason why things happen. That we also have a choice in how we react, and we also have a choice in whether we want to take path X or path Y.
Yep.
That is my understanding nowadays. But it was such an important part of my life, and it really changed me internally. Perhaps not externally, because I honestly had nobody to talk about it. I could not share my experience with people around me.
Because?
It was just so out of ordinary. I was surrounded by very Cartesian, down-to-earth people to whom near-death stuff didn't exist. I was probably delusional or had too much painkillers.
So you in that circumstance chose not to share it with people.
Yes.
And yet, obviously, it had a huge impact on you.
Massive.
So, but by not sharing it with people on the outside, it looked like you fortunately recovered and went back to your life as it was, it sounds like.
Yes and no.
Okay.
Because there was an inner shift that happened.
Oh, I no doubt. But on the surface, you just went back to school and went about, sort of proceeded as was expected, it sounds like.
Yes.
But exactly. I can imagine on the inside, you were never the same again.
I was never the same. And then, as life would have it, I got a job in India.
Mm.
And India is a very different world.
Yeah.
And there, these sorts of things were not considered as strange or abnormal, and spirituality was at least in those days really very much part of the way people lived their lives.
So was that like an in between, like a summer position, or because you said you went
it was a couple of months.
Oh,
it was a couple of months before I graduated.
I see. Oh, okay, yeah. Got it. Before you went to Switzerland, then.
Yeah.
Oh,
exactly.
I see.
Yeah. So I worked in India, and it was a transformational experience. It was not an easy experience, and the culture shock was huge.
I bet.
Huge. And I honestly didn't really have much to do I was walking around in my sari and smiling and being the exotic thing.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Because they didn't know what to do with me. I didn't really have a role. It was.
So you were, I think sometimes when students go to another country for a brief period, that it's more observational than hands-on, probably, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And in a society and in a company hierarchy where everything is very, in a company where hierarchy is part of the course, you can't just go and take somebody else's job. I come from a culture where if I have to clean the toilets, or if I have to do whatever, I will.
Yeah.
But there, every single person had their own role and specific task. So you couldn't just go and take that task away, because that was their livelihood.
Right.
And then there were many other things. I mean, I learned so much when I was there.
As we're talking about this, I'm watching you. Obviously, people will just be listening to this. This is why I'm sharing this. And it's as if you're almost there right now. You are reflecting on it and going back there. And it's kind of fun to watch you talking about it. It's not even just about what you're saying. It's the way in which you transport yourself as you're talking about these experiences. And I've been having some really interesting experiences with my guests as they describe their past experiences. It's not even the experiences themselves sometimes, but how they sort of put themselves back in these places and sort of take out of it or extract out of it what it meant to them or what they learned and take that forward. And I think that that's an important thing that we all need to remember to do as we go forward in our lives, not just in our careers, but in our lives, and take what we need, and we can leave whatever we don't need behind.
Exactly.
But it sounds like that experience in India was enormously rich for you, even though you weren't necessarily enabled to do anything in particular. It actually didn't matter. You got what you needed out of it. And so from that experience, I mean, that must have been some heck of a year for you.
It was.
Between your accident and going back to school, then going to India, and then going back and I guess graduating at some point, not too far off from there, and then entering the world of full-time work and finding more surprises. That was, talk about formative. That was huge.
It was huge.
Yeah.
It was huge.
Yeah. And always throughout that period there, it sounds like it was almost like a parallel experience for you. There was the investment you had in school and learning and taking what you could get out of it. But it sounds like there was also this sort of narrative or dialogue going on within you saying, I'm learning a lot, and there's a piece of this that doesn't quite fit with me. And yet I'm going to take what I can learn and I don't know how aware at the time you were with your sort of discomfort, but it sounds, I don't think it's just reflective. I think you were aware. But
I was aware, but maybe as you know, when you're young, you don't have that same. It will be hard. It's hard to say now because I have so much more experience and I have my counseling degree and I can reflect and I have done tons of therapy and all that.
Well, and you had a goal. I think when you're young and you're in school, you know that you need certain credentials to go forward at a point. And so I could see where, you're in school. Of course, you're going to take some courses that don't resonate with you as much. And there may be some things you learn that you're going to take and you're going to leave behind. That's what school is, right? And so I could see where you may not have quite, articulated it in the same way that you could now, of course. But it's still interesting to note that dynamic was going on with you at that time. Of course, it's going to be rising to the surface very differently now. So
tell me what's interesting when you said about India, and even though it was a rough experience in some ways, both the near-death experience and then India were experiences that nourished my soul.
Yeah.
Really, truly my soul.
Yeah.
That was my experience of India as well. There was something that really resonated with me. And it wasn't the traditional, traditional Indian things that hippies would go and search, because I worked 6 days per week. So I didn't have time for any hippie trail. And it wasn't my thing in any case.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something in the land and in the people, and especially with the people that I met. Mm-hmm. I also lived with a wonderful Indian family that was so generous with their time, and I saw that wonderful togetherness that Indian families have or had. I've heard since that this has also changed in India, but they used to have that wonderful feeling of family that I had never experienced in my childhood. Because it's not part of my culture. It just wasn't part of my family's way of being or doing things. But though all of those things really opened me up and said, oh, well, here's this other way. And Indians are incredibly generous people with guests. There's this Indian saying where they say that guests are a gift from God.
So, yeah, it sounds like those experiences are continuing to nourish you.
They are. Actually, thank you for transporting me back there, because it's I have really good souvenirs and and I've never actually, before we had this conversation, I knew that it was an important experience in my life, but I had never perhaps understood how important.
Oh, okay.
So there's this realization that happened at the same time as we were discussing and you were describing it.
Yeah,
that it was bigger than I had ever realized.
And what's interesting about that too is it was a relatively short period of time.
Yes.
As compared to some of the other experiences you had going forward, right? When you say, I was working in supply chain about 15 years and corporations and all these other wonderful countries and places that I got to live and travel and all these things that you wanted to do. And you had this, short period of time where you said it was both, nourishing to your soul, but also rough. And yet it clearly was very, very deep for you.
Yeah.
So where did you go from there then? It sounds like it's also in retrospect that you're recognizing that. And so you graduated from school, you got your position in Switzerland, and then at some point you lived in China. Did you work for different companies over those years, or were you working?
I did.
Yeah,
I did.
In different industries, or?
Yeah, that's also the interesting, the rich part of my life, that I have not worked only for one industry. And again, you can always learn, and I find it as a richness to work for in different fields.
Yeah.
You can be a specialist and you can go really deep in something. I mean, if you're an R&D person, obviously you can't really swap all the time, or if you do something specific. But in my line of work, it has been very enriching, to deal with medical machinery, and then the rag trade.
The what trade?
The rag trade.
The rag trade. What is that?
Yes, the apparel industry. I was producing clothing and textiles and footwear and accessories and all kinds of goodies in China.
Right. Oh, okay. Got it. That's great. And so where was the turning point from supply chain, corporate, being part of the corporate machine, so to speak, and you're getting your credentials as a counselor and working, more exclusively in the mental health arena? I mean, I know that you still work with corporations and businesses, but when did that really become your priority?
That priority happened when I was in China. The things that we discussed just earlier, near-death experience, India, and my mini burnout, all of those things had made me realize that I needed to take better care of myself and prevent this from happening again.
I see.
But then I was recruited to go to China, and I was there at the time when it was a hardship posting. I was in Shanghai. Nowadays, it's a global, it's an international city.
Right.
But in those days, it was a very different place. It was also fun. It was a little bit like the Wild West. Honestly, it was expats that would navigate to China. You didn't have the corporates, expats, or as one friend of mine would call them, the suits. We didn't have the suits. We had the gung-ho pioneering types that were not afraid of getting their hands dirty and traveling in funny places, in funny conditions. And, it was actually a beautiful experience. It was fun.
And this was
fantastic people in China.
Was this going to China? Was this after you had your mini burnout?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you went to this sort of, at the time, was considered to be a hardship post, but you were also much more conscious of how you needed to take care of yourself. And yet you were going into a situation where you knew there might be some challenging conditions, even though once you got there, you could see, it sounds like you had some fun. But you did say yes to a situation that could have been another burnout situation. Is that right?
Well, Tammy, remember what I said about my childhood. I wanted to travel and see the world and see different cultures.
I remember.
Cultural thing was like, I could not resist.
Yes.
I'm being offered a position in China. I'm like, of course I'd take it. If I get a position in India, of course I would take it. Like, why wouldn't I?
Right.
My reasoning would never be like, oh, it can be dangerous, or it can be this and that. On the contrary, I would jump on it.
Well, I guess part of taking care of yourself too was also feeding or fueling that part of you that wanted to explore and go to different places, right?
Yes. Yeah. And we had and China was an interesting place, and it still is very close to my heart in many ways. I mean, I have so many good memories. I also have so many interesting memories. But those are more like the war stories that people tell, the road warriors, remember that time when, when there was only this one shop in Shanghai and you had to. But what happened there was that China was a place where you had in those days, it is quite a polluted country.
Yes, yes.
And there's little nature. And during the weekends, I had a 24/7 job, and I was managing a Chinese team there. So I really was on the call all the time, and I didn't work and pleasure or work or free time were blending a lot. Like it is in Asia, people work very long days.
Yes.
And it's part of what's considered normal. And I found the expat scene quite disturbing because there was this culture of work hard, play hard, meaning that mostly expats went to bars, and it was like hardcore partying. And it wasn't my path. By that time, I had been into mindfulness for many, many years. I was meditating. I was vegetarian, taking care of myself, all of the good stuff. And it wasn't really my scene. And I didn't have many options, but I also knew that if I didn't do something for myself, I could get another burnout.
Right.
Because it was a hardship posting and I was alone.
Yes.
So what ended up happening is that I volunteered for counseling helpline.
Ah, okay.
And it was a fantastic, we had fantastic training. There were these pioneers. They were all from the US, Australia, and the UK. Can't even remember all the nationalities, but they were professionals that came together and said, we have to do something. We have to do something to help the community. And that's how I started my counseling career. And I loved what I was doing.
Yeah.
I truly loved what I was doing.
Yeah.
And that is why I decided to get a formal degree.
I see. Now, did you leave your job in order to do that, or did you go part-time?
I had a contract which was for a certain period of time. And when that contract expired, I got another contract in another part of China, actually in Hong Kong, in southern China, and then I would go to Hong Kong for school. So I did my studies in Hong Kong.
Oh, I see.
And I ended up living in Hong Kong as well. So it was a beautiful shift from Shanghai. Has its merits, and it's a wonderful big city.
Yes,
with full of history and so many things that have happened in Chinese history have happened. The pivotal moments in Chinese history have often happened in Shanghai, but then Hong Kong has its charm. Yeah. I absolutely love Hong Kong. Yeah. So I was there.
So you got another contract. So you were working and going to school.
Yes.
Wow. And what was your vision
on the side?
Right.
I was becoming a real Asian, like, wow. Yeah, between 10 and 12.
You were working more than 24/7.
Yes.
And but probably loving it all at the same time, I can imagine.
I was.
Were you envisioning moving more into the counseling arena and leaving I
was. It was really a vocation. It was an eye-opener, and I loved that part. What I had not taken into account, unfortunately, is that counseling is a protected profession. And different countries have very different legislations.
Yes.
So it wasn't like I was just able to take that degree and move to just any country of my choice.
Right.
And start a counseling practice, because that's not the way it works.
Right.
And that came to me a little bit as a surprise, because that was something. In China, of course, anybody could practice anything because there was no legislation.
I see.
But anyway, in the West, that was a problem. And then I also realized that I wanted to make a bigger impact, not just one-on-one counseling, but to make a bigger impact. And in those days, it was just too early. I was very interested in EAPs.
I see. Mm-hmm.
And I was very interested in workplace well-being, because that was my original reason for going into counseling. But it was too early. And it's interesting how nowadays, now the tide has turned, the world has changed, and the pandemic has created a situation where these things can be talked of.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's more normal. So now I feel that I'm in that place where I was hoping to be when I got my counseling degree.
Right.
But it's all good. It's all good because in between I have been able to do other things and also grow as a person and have a family and things like that. So
So a lot of things have changed since that time. You have a family and you are back in Switzerland and you are working for yourself now. So tell us about your, take us forward to your training programs and some of the work that you're doing today.
I'm a great believer in choice. That people can choose mental wellness in as much as you can choose to be physically fit. You can choose to be mentally fit. I'm not excluding people. Now this excludes people who actually have a mental illness or a condition which needs medication. So just that we are clear on that one. But the large majority of people would be in a much better shape if they took better care of themselves and their mental health. And it's a series of daily choices.
Right.
It's not rocket science.
No.
And it's not that, you should meditate yourself. Not everybody needs meditation. Not everybody is going to benefit from being mindful. Not everybody is going to benefit from doing this type of sport. You have to find a way that suits you. And this is one of the messages that I'm giving to my clients and also to people that I train. But there are ways to make yourself feel better. You just have to take that responsibility. And here are the tools for you to do what you need to do. And then it's up to you to either use those tools or not, or find other tools that work for you. But don't give up trying to find tools that work. Because ultimately there are tools that will work for you.
And I love what you're saying about encouraging people to find what works for you, because we all have, in this day and age, we have so many different tools available to us. And so, and there are so many ways to find them. That in and of itself could be overwhelming, but
it actually is for quite many. It's like, am I supposed to do this or am I supposed to do that? But because we have this disconnection with our core, and your books is work from the inside out. And that is exactly my philosophy as well. When you want to make a shift, the shift happens inside. It's not the external things.
That's right.
You can change external things occasionally, but by and large, the only person and the only space that you can influence is within you.
Right. And you have to be listening to that, right? That's the part where, we always say later, I wish I had listened to my intuition, right? And it's just that voice inside that's telling you what you really want, not what you think everyone else wants.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Susanna, where can people find out more about your work? What's the best place for them to find you?
The best place to find me is on my website, which is innerwork.world.
Innerwork.world.
Yes.
Great. We will have that in the show notes. And I also know that you are on LinkedIn.
Yes.
And
I'm under my Susanna Harkonen.
Right. And so people can learn more about your work there. Anything else that people should know about before we wrap up today?
I would encourage people to find role models that take them forward.
I love that. That's great.
Not the role models that everybody has, so not the role models the social media tells you, but I'm truly inspired by wisdom, and I have been incredibly lucky to meet very wise people in my life. Perhaps a few handfuls, if even that, but these wise, deep persons have really truly impacted me, whether they've been there for a few weeks or months or just in passing. And those encounters do change you, and they give you that energy
Mm-hmm.
and that encouragement to move forward on your path and to be truly authentic with yourself. So I would encourage people to find that, or not even look for it. It'll come when you're open to it.
I agree. I think it's that moment when you know that somebody has said something to you or has just said something that draws something out from within you that you've been either looking for within yourself or that you discovered that you didn't even know you had.
Exactly. Thanks, Tammy. It was great to be here with you.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Susanna Harkonen. It was so interesting to speak with her and learn about her personal and professional journey. What is your key takeaway from the interview? If you are interested in any of the resources or links mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them on the blog page of my website at tammygulerloeb.com. Just look for episode 152. Are you anticipating your next professional move? Perhaps you're feeling a little stuck. Stay tuned for my new book, Work from the Inside Out: Break Through 9 Common Obstacles to Design a Career That Fulfills You. It'll be available in January 2022 in print and digital ebook editions through my website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and independent bookstores. If you were inspired by this episode with Susanna, please share it with your friends and colleagues. And please do subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. If you're enjoying the podcast, I'd really appreciate your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find at tammygulerloeb.com/podcasts. Just click on the Apple Podcast button there and follow the instructions. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. I'd love to hear from you. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.